Holy shit. Holy shit.
Is that not unreal?
How do you even do this?
This BMW right here was on the brink of failure. It had a hemorrhaging oil leak, a coolant leak, a transmission issue, and a check engine light. Well, we just got all that fixed and turned it into a nice, reliable daily driver ready for another 100K on the road. Let me show you how I did it. Welcome back to Project Hunter. If you missed the first two episodes, the inspection and the diagnosis, I will link them down below. This episode, we're going to be fixing the hemorrhaging oil leak at the dipstick tube. We're also doing a full transmission service with an additive to fix rough shifting. There's a check engine light present for the mass airflow sensor. We are replacing the expansion tank and the thermostat because of coolant leaks. We're also resealing the oil filter housing with a new gasket and new Ventus oil line. We're going to pull both belts, replace those, and check the pulleys on the front end. And we're also flushing the power steering system with a new reservoir and filter. We're kicking things off with the oil filter housing reseal. We have to take both belts off in order to get access to the alternator and the power steering pump. Those need to be dropped and removed in order to get the housing out. Right now I'm spinning the pulleys, checking to see if there's any play in the water pump or the tensioner pulleys, which they are making some noise, so we're going to address that at a later date. I am cracking the oil filter loose, draining the power steering fluid, and continuing to pull components to get access to that oil filter housing. Are disconnecting the power from the battery up through here to the alternator. So you don't need to disconnect the power in the back. If you are just pulling the alternator, you can DC it right here. Remove the plug off the back. Now if you don't disconnect power, this lead right here underneath this 17 nut is going to be live, and so you really want to DC power before you touch that thing. Now we can take out the two 16mm bolts that hold it in. There we go. Once the hardware's out, I like to take a pry bar here between the oil filter housing and the alternator and just sort of pop it out to get it loose, because it does sandwich down on there pretty tight. Now, I'm not happy with the condition on this tensioner, although I do have some older tensioners from my E86, so I'm going to pull that out, see if it matches up, and see if I can swap this over, because the bearing on this one is still cherry. It's just two 13mm bolts. This bearing sounds terrible. So we definitely need to address this. Although it looks exactly the same as this tensioner that came off of my E46, so I'm probably just going to swap these two. I see no reason why I can't so far. Next, let's drop this power steering pump, just these two front 13s. So we can disconnect our two sensors off of the oil filter housing, this one up top and this one in the back. Now I haven't jacked this thing up yet because I like doing the oil filter housing at a comfortable height, but now I'm going to get this thing up on jack stands and get the oil drained out of it so I can crack that filter housing loose. You don't have to, but I'm going to just to reduce mess. What you doing? So I dumped out the oil. Next step is disconnecting this banjo bolt. It's 17mm. It has two sealing washers. Keep a hold of them and match them up with the new sealing washers for your Ventus oil line. Next step, we can start cracking all of the 13mm bolts loose for the oil filter housing. They are 13mm. After I pull the hardware for the oil filter housing, I like to break it loose with a pry bar, release it from the block, and then you can take the entire housing out with the Ventus line attached. Here you can see the back side of the gasket as well as some evidence of some leaking. Now these oil filter housings do leak down the driver's side of the engine. If you see anything on the driver's side, really it's probably going to be the oil filter housing or the Ventus oil line, because there's really not too many other serviceable components that flow oil on that side of the engine. I used a little bit of degreaser plus this bristle brush just to agitate some of that grease and grime. I'm just going to spray it off with some brake cleaner just to mildly clean up the surface. We're going to do a little bit more deep cleaning later on in the video with the electric pressure washer. Now this gasket wasn't dry and brittle and breaking apart like most of them I see. It still had a little bit of elasticity to it, but it definitely was still leaking on that side of the block.
Vanos oil line loose. Clean up the mating surface for this Vanos oil line real quick.
L-ring makes this gasket, and I like L-ring. Time to go back in.
There she goes.
Hardware is going in for the oil filter housing, and now it's time to torque it up to spec. 22 Newton meters is the torque spec for this piece. There is 6 bolts that I just like to torque equal and opposite. I start in the center and then work my way out. So I have a new Ventus oil line from Rhine. I haven't had any issues with their Ventus oil lines before. Their sealing washers come in the kit. I like to match them up with the old ones, make sure they're correct. And a good note on this is that bent end goes down onto the back side of the oil filter housing. The straight end mates up to the Ventus hub. Now this alternator, the lower nut is a slip style bushing, and when you torque it down onto the oil filter housing, that nut slides forward and it really sandwiches tight on the oil filter housing. Well, it can make it a real pain in the ass to get the alternator back in, so you can take a C-clamp or a bench vise with an oversized socket and you can press that nut back out and open up that gap. It just makes it a lot easier to drop that alternator back in. If you do this, that alternator will just fall right back into place. If you don't, sometimes it can really fight you getting it reinstalled. Now, like I showed you earlier, that tensioner pulley bearing was making a lot of noise, so I'm swapping out the entire tensioner assembly with this used tensioner I had off of my E46. It's still plenty good and didn't need to get replaced, so it's going to make a perfect swap. However, the AC tensioner is a bit different style, so I'm going to pull the pulley off of that one and then pull the pulley off another tensioner I have and just swap the pulleys and not the entire tensioner assembly. This one had a lot of play and really needed to get replaced. Next item is the power steering reservoir. Now, if you're going to do a power steering flush on these cars, you need to replace the reservoir. It has a filter inside and it's the best way to do it. To get these hose clamps loose, I like to take a hose pick or a flathead screwdriver, stick it up inside the loop of that factory hose clamp, twist it sideways, and you should be able to get them to break loose relatively easy. Now when I install these new power steering bottles, I like to line up that outside hose connection right in between those two mounting locations. It's usually pretty spot on with the hose positioning when the bottle goes back in and the hose clamps are tight. Now this has happened a few times that I'll buy a new ATF style reservoir but the cap will say CHF11S. So right here I'm just swapping the O-rings off of the new cap and reinstalling that new O-ring onto the old ATF style cap. Well, I guess I lost audio, but we're back. Luckily I caught it. Power steering reservoir is taken care of. Oil filter housing is resealed and tight. Vanos oil line is resealed and tight. Alternator's back in. Power steering pump is back in. Swap the pulley on the tensioner. Swap the pulley on the AC tensioner. I think now we should start tucking into some of the coolant work. Okay, first things first, let's pull some fluid so we don't make so much of a mess. Guys, if you guys do a lot of DIY work, these things are so incredibly helpful. So I thought about it, and I'm not going to drain the coolant from the bottom. I'm just going to pull the expansion tank and let it spill out. Those drain petcocks are kind of a pain, and sometimes they make more mess than they are good. So let's get this upper hose DC'd. And I like to put this cap back on, take a pry bar, and then lever this bottle up, just like that. And this connection right here is the one I suspected a leak in, so that's why we're going to do the entire expansion tank. So here's our new expansion tank. It did not come with the cap. It also did not come with our level sensor and our clip. So there's a couple things we need to swap over. Swap that over, keep it in the, you can put it in the closed position, it'll just lock back down. Next, we need to pull this automatic transmission thermostat out. This one didn't break, so that's a good sign, but we're still going to replace it. And just pull that on straight up and out, and you'll be good. You guys know what's coming next. A little bit of Seal Glide and wet silicone. Lube up all these O-rings on this trans thermostat. Got to lubricate all these O-rings. Lube up these O-rings in the bottom of the expansion tank. The expansion tank up with this radiator bracket. Make sure everything's there. Plug our coolant level sensor back in. It's all lined up. Now just push down. Locks in. Make sure your clip is locked. Cooling system component is thermostat. DC this lower hose. Take this thing, turn it to the right, she comes on out. The reason why we're replacing this is has some obvious crust on the bottom down here, and just looked old and tired. You could tell it was leaking in the past from right here, so putting on a freshie. Now this one's pretty ugly, so I'm going to use this worn out Scotch-Brite disc on a pneumatic tool. I don't recommend you do this unless you're pretty well versed with these tools. It's pretty easy to take too much meat off, so if you do use it, just use it with great caution. Looking minty fresh. Okay, new Molly Bear thermostat going in. O-ring just a light fog. Just nice and easy with a 1/4-inch ratchet. These M54s are the best though. I know I say it quite a bit, but I really do mean it. I've worked on M52s and S54s, and I worked on all kinds of BMW engines, and these things just do great. They last a really long time. I've never seen any other engine go higher mileage than I have M54s. Spray off all this dust from me grinding. Lube up these thermostat connections with some Sil Glide. Silicone grease works too. I've just been using this stuff for years, so I like to stick with it. Lube this upper. Alright, and to fill this bad boy and to bleed it, we'll pull this bleed screw here on the upper hose. I just like to pull it out completely. Alright, I'm back, and we picked up some BMW coolant from O'Reilly. Let's get this thing topped up, and hopefully it's nice and tight. Let's get some light. We'll evacuate some fluid too, because it's a bit overfilled now, but at least it's bled. Snug that back down. Put some pressure in her. Let's go 16 psi. Okay, coolant is holding strong at 17 psi, so I'm going to start slapping these belts on. Cooling system appears to be holding strong at 17 psi. I might even just let this one soak overnight. Alright, the front end is pretty much buttoned up, so let's drop this cooling fan back in. If anything else happens, we can always take it back out. Let's knock out this oil level sensor real quick. Get this cleaned up real fast. I got a new oil level sensor here from Hella. Plug out. Boom, done. D-U-N, done. Cooling system is still holding at 17, so that's great. Well, I got a little bit of steam left. Let's try to knock out this dipstick tube O-ring. If you guys saw during the inspection video, this thing was absolutely hemorrhaging oil under load. I confirmed it with a smoke machine with the new Ventus by Autoline. I will be posting up a YouTube short very soon showcasing that diagnosis, so keep your eyes peeled. Hopefully I'm going to be a better window than a door. Let's disconnect this fuel line. We need to disconnect this drain back tube for the crankcase breather. It drains down into the dipstick tube. I'm going to need to get my little hose picker madooger and pick that thing off. Get the hose pick in there. Try to break the seal on that drain hose. It's been replaced, so it's relatively fresh, which is good. If that thing was original, it would be a nightmare to get off. We'd probably end up tearing it. Dipstick tube is free-ish. This is going to be a
a tight fit to get this thing out of there.
Well, I was hoping to have to not tear into this area, but gotta do what you gotta do. So let's get this strut bar out of here, and then we need to get access down to the lower intake boot. Microfilter out. I'm too short. Oh, he needs a new cowl. Pull this piece out. Let's pull the Disa. I hope it's in good shape. I don't want to have to add a Disa onto this repair bill. Well, the pin is still there. Someone siliconed the out of this thing. Holy cow. But good news is I got access to one of the screws for the intake boot. Someone oriented this hose clamp to the bottom, which is so stupid. So I'll be right back. I'm going down below to see it. I had to do it blind. Who puts the hose clamp on the bottom like that? Just orient it up on the side and you can reach right down next to the idle air control and get it. Yeah! There we go, baby! Dipstick tube is out. The O-ring is still in there, so let's go fish that thing out. This is why it was leaking. There is no dipstick tube O-ring. Somebody forgot to install the dipstick tube O-ring. No wonder why this thing was hemorrhaging oil under load. I'm gonna go double check it with a mirror, but I'm serious. Someone forgot to put the O-ring on the dipstick tube and it was just blowing past this seal right here. This is not the O-ring. This is simply just a collar that the O-ring sits underneath. They just forgot it. So someone did the oil pan, did not put the O-ring back in. I just confirmed it with an inspection mirror. There is no dipstick tube O-ring in there. So that solves our issue. Alright guys, sorry about this. My audio is just being an absolute pain in the ass today. But I got the dipstick tube O-ring reseated. I lubricated it up real good with Sil Glide and wet silicone. You got to get on top of them and apply quite a bit of force to get the O-ring to seat. But you'll know you'll have it fully seated when the bracket for the dipstick tube lines up with the threads on the engine mount. And so I'm going to go downstairs and double check it, make sure it's lined up, throw the bolt back in, and we'll continue with reinstallation. You know what? I think I'm going to call it a night. We're going to let this cooling system marinate. It's still holding at 17 psi, which is perfect. It's 8 p.m. I'm tuckered out. We're going to hammer this thing hard tomorrow, try to finish it all in one video. So I'm going to get some rest. I'll see you guys in the morning. It is the next day. We are back. The cooling system held at 17 psi, so we are good on cooling system repairs. The dipstick tube O-ring replacement went real smooth yesterday, so we are in good shape. We just got to get all this junk back together. So let's get started. All right, intake boot going back on. Now, before I put this on, there's a little notch right here that slips into a notch on the throttle body. So when you're putting this back on, make sure that thing is lined up. You can sneak your finger down there and sort of feel where it's lining up too. Next, we got to get this Disa valve back in. Someone obviously really likes silicone. So I'm going to clean all this up. I'm not going to re-silicone it because I'm not a fan, but I'll lubricate it up real nice with Sil Glide. Maybe some silicone grease. Wet silicone spray. We're going to smoke it after I'm done. Make sure. That's why it was the first tool that I bought when I started my channel, was a Autoline smoke machine. This valve, you guys know what's next. Took the intake apart, gotta smoke test it. Let's get the intake adapter installed. Ventus time, baby. I really do love this machine. Setup is so much easier than the others. No power supply. Boom! What is that, 5 seconds to get smoke? Let's see how good our repairs were. We got smoke to the valve cover, so we know the intake is fully pressurized. Plus we had a lot of pressure release out of there. So we got smoke to the oil cap, so we know the entire engine's pressurized with smoke. We have no smoke coming from the diesel valve seal. We have no smoke coming from our intake boot connection, so we know that our work is good and it's sealed up nice and tight. Now, these smoke machines really do make the difference between a mechanic and a very good mechanic, in my opinion. The best people I know go through, double check their work. If they do an oil leak repair, they inspect it after they drive it and they clean it. If you remove intake manifolds to repair a vacuum leak, you smoke it to make sure that you didn't mess anything up on the reinstallation. What better way to know that your work is quality and done well than to double check it afterwards with some smoke? So, gotta love this machine. Microfilter's all buttoned up. Now I'm replacing the mass airflow sensor. If you guys saw the previous videos, we had some check engine lights associated to this thing. We had a code for the hot film mass airflow sensor itself, plus a code for the intake air temperature, and some mixture adaptation faults. So this new mass airflow sensor should rectify all that. Beautiful. All right, let's get some oil in this thing. I got some Liqui Moly 530 Special Tech BMW Long Life 01. Now this is a perfect example to talk about liters versus quarts. This is a 5-liter jug. That means this is 5 1/4 quarts. So if you were to put 7 liters into this thing, you would be overfilled by like over half a quart. All right, let's get this ATF topped up too. I did pull the cooling system pressure tester off and I evacuated a little bit of coolant, and so that's up to level and we're good to go on that. So we're making really good progress. We got everything in the engine bay buttoned up. We just need to do control arm bushings and trans service. I was going to try to knock out the control arm bushings with my wheel bearing press tool, but that is not going to work, so I'm probably going to have to order some tools up for it. So let's jump over to the transmission service and knock that out. Alright, I got this thing up on jack stands, equal height, front and rear. Time to get underneath, get the trans fluid drained out. So the trans pan doesn't look bad. I'm not seeing any big material in there, which is good. We're going to take this thing out, get it pressure washed and cleaned up real quick. I didn't see the seal come out for the trans filter, so I know it's still in there. Oh, there it is. Well, there's one of them. Oh, stop dripping on my face. There's the second. So I just used a pick tool and on my head, and I got both of my seals for the transmission filter pulled out. Now I'm going to use a little dab of some Curl T gasket maker by L-Ring. Going to need to re-up on this soon. Okay, smear that in real quick. Just a real light layer. So, now let's put the pan back up. Next step is we got to remove this bracket right here. This is the selector shaft, and there's a seal up there behind that nut, and that commonly leaks on the GM transmission, so we're going to knock that out while we're in here. Well, I got it out. Alright guys, I got the selector shaft seal out. I bent every single pick that I had, and I tried to run screws in. It was an absolute righteous pain in the ass. I probably spent close to 2 hours trying to get this thing out. So unless it's hemorrhaging oil, then I would recommend not having to replace it or deal with it. I've replaced these in the past, but this one was extra tough, and it took so much damn time. I'm really happy to have it out. I need to get this new seal in and get this transmission filled, but what an ass kicker. That thing wiped me out. Here's our old seal, here's our new seal. You can see I went through quite a few picks. Here's some more picks, here's another pick. What a pain in the ass. Alright guys, I got the selector seal back in. I just had to knock it out real quick. In order to get it in, I used a 14mm deep socket 1/4 inch and a pry bar. Line it up on the selector shaft seal and then lever off the unibody up here and just sort of press the seal in with that socket. I used a 13 and a 14mm deep socket to press it in. So I'm going to get this nut back on, and we're going to get this transmission filled up because I am going to get this car running today. I got to get the exhaust back up here too. I disconnected it at the exhaust flange right here to get some more room, so we got to pop that back up real quick. Alright, so I got a new fill plug, a new drain plug, 6 quarts of liquid moly ATF Top Tech. This is what FCP Euro recommended for the vehicle. And then we are also going to run about 6 ounces of this Lube Guard Platinum. One of you guys recommended it when I was diagnosing the transmission. So we're going to put about 6 ounces in for 6 liters of fluid. Alright, we got ignition turned on, ICOM is plugged in, we got our Ethernet running over to the laptop. Alright, so we have a couple faults here. Mixture preparation, bank 1, bank 2, that's probably for too lean, but we're going to be addressing that with the mass airflow sensor we replaced. And it does look like it's still saying mixture too lean, but we don't have any vacuum leaks. And then one for the gas tank. Not correctly closed, but that's no big deal. That's for the gas cap. So now we can go from control unit tree to control unit list. Go down here to transmission control, call up ECU functions. So now inside the EGS we can go to diagnosis scan, transmission functions, transmission oil temperature, and read state. Now we can fire up the car, run through the gears to get the fluid flowing, and wait for that to get up to 30 to 50 Celsius, and then we can continue our fill. Okay, now we can fire this puppy up and then reverse for a few seconds, neutral for a few seconds, drive for a few seconds, and then first gear, second gear, and third gear. Everything up front looks good, sounds good. There's no more belt chirp, which is a great sign. We still need to pressure wash everything off, and we also need to finish flushing the power steering fluid. And we're at 21 degrees Celsius, so we just need to let her warm up some more. Okay, transmission is up to 30 degrees Celsius. Let's continue the fill. Trans service is complete. I'm going to shut the car off real quick and just take a look at fault code, see if anything came up. Okay, so nothing new. I'm going to delete the fault memory. So I reset engine adaptations. I also reset the transmission adaptations. Now with the transmission adaptations reset, that platinum lube guard, transmission additive, all the fresh fluid, the fresh filter, I'm really hoping this thing will shift better. We'll find out. Next thing I'm going to do is get this thing off jack stands and finish the power steering flush. So I just did my first drain and fill with the engine off. Now I just topped it off with fresh ATF. I'm letting the engine run, letting the power steering pump circulate that new fluid. We're going to continue to evacuate it, add new fluid, evacuate, add new fluid while it's running till we get a nice ruby red color at the bottle. There you go. We have a nice ruby red fluid color. You can see the white of the filter assembly at the base of the reservoir. That's my rule of thumb on whether the fluid is clear enough. If I can see that white, I know it's sufficient. Well guys, I'm going to call it there. We got pretty much all the repairs done. The only thing we have left to do is degrease this whole thing, pressure wash the top and bottom, and then take it for a good road test. See how that transmission and the engine performs. I'll see you in the morning. Welcome back to what should be the third and final day on this X3. In quick summary, we replaced the thermostat, the expansion tank, as well as the automatic transmission thermostat. We replaced both serpentine belts. I also refreshed that pulley on the tensioner there and the pulley on the AC tensioner as well. We replaced the mass airflow sensor. We also installed a dipstick tube O-ring that was leaking and completely absent. Somebody must have done the oil pan and forgot to install one, so we fixed that hemorrhaging oil leak down below. We also flushed the power steering system and installed a new reservoir, got all new fluid. We also did a fresh oil service, and we resealed the oil filter housing with a brand new Vanos oil line. We also replaced the oil level sensor and finished up with a fresh transmission service, all new pan gasket filter, all new fresh fluid, and that platinum lube guard transmission additive. The check engine light is cleared, the transmission adaptations have been reset, and we are all good to go. Cooling system is bled. Let's give this thing a drive and see how this transmission performs this morning. Okay, let's see what happens. You know what? I need to check coolant real quick before engine gets too hot. But this thing only liked to act up when it was under load. So far so good. It's shifting real smooth under light load. Let's give it the juice on this next on-ramp and see how she performs. It's better. It's not perfect, but it's better. So hopefully we can get some more life out of this transmission. Felt it drop for a quick second, but it's definitely a lot better than it once was. Let's give the transmission another shakedown. Hey, that was perfect. Perfect shifts right there. Hey, it's shifting pretty great. I'd call that fixed. Oh yeah. I'd say that's shifting way better. I'm happy with it. It's not slipping like it was in third gear at high RPM. The upshift is a lot smoother. It's not perfect. It's still a GM transmission, but I'd say we have improved the issue. That's a win. All right, one last good pull to check on the bill of health. Let's see. Hey, fixed. Call it fixed. It's not even acting up anymore. What? What are you looking at? Nice. I'm happy with it. All right. Well, successful road test. We fixed the oil leak, we fixed the coolant leak, we fixed the transmission shifting issue, we also fixed the check engine light. Now we got to decrease the engine bay, get up underneath, degrease the whole undercarriage, get that all pressure washed off, clean up the underbody panels, get those reinstalled, get this car back to Josh. I'm going to use some foamy gunk engine cleaner on this one, fog down the top, fog down the bottom, pressure wash it all off. Gonna hit it with some Stoner wheel cleaner real quick. I'm just gonna agitate the wheels a little bit. Busting out the Stoner foam cannon today. Check this thing out. Ain't that a beautiful sight? I'm not using my bristle brush, all right, so don't worry, Lieutenant Dan. I'm gonna use it for the roof though. I'm using the mother of all bubbles in the foam cannon. Works really good. I've been really happy with it. It also smells really good too. And I know some of you guys were saying that the microfibers have a tendency to scratch even if they're brand new. So I asked Stoner to ship me out some drying towels. These things are sweet, they're huge, and they've been working really well. She's looking really good. I couldn't deliver this car back to Josh without cleaning it up a little bit. Whenever we'd have a big repair bill at the auto shop, we would get customers' cars washed for them. Sometimes I'd wash them. Sometimes we'd even schedule a detailer to come out and do a full detail if the repair bill was high enough. So I just like to keep that level of service going. You know, if someone's going to pay you good money to do a job and you're going to get the car dirty in the process, it's your responsibility to clean it up. And Josh is going to be real happy, and he's going to have a head start on detailing out this thing. That wheel cleaner with just a little bit of agitation from the brush and some foam cannon did a really good job too. Not done yet. We got some underbody panels to clean. This isn't even the right underbody panel. This thing ain't made for this car. Sorry, Josh, but this underbody panel is not the right one for the car, brother. So, I don't know what car this is for, but it ain't this car. I can tell you that. Gonna finish off the engine bay with some Stoner trim shine. wiper fluid. Well guys, what do you think? Not too shabby. She cleaned up real nice. Gotta love that aerosol trim shine. Just makes everything look so good. She's ready for her new home. And last but not least, gotta set tire pressures. Almost forgot the tire shine. Gonna use some more shine tire finish. She is fixed up, washed up, shined up, and ready to go. I'm going to be driving this thing down to Josh today. I'll bring you guys with me and we can get his reaction when we show him the car. Hunter, if you're seeing this, I hope you enjoy your new car, man. She is in good shape and I have no doubt that she will be nice and reliable for you. All right, you guys, we're going to drive this thing down to Josh and deliver it. He's about 30 minutes south, but I'm going to bring you guys with me. Hopefully we can get a good reaction from him. Let's roll. She is driving perfect. Been on the road about 20 minutes and this thing is driving absolutely cherry. Hunter, you got a really good car on your hands, dude. I'm real happy with the outcome on this one. Of course, it's starting to rain as soon as we get to our destination. And we have arrived. Josh has a sweet little beach bungalow right here on the inside of the bay. Oceanfront views right out the front door. Great spot. Shined up, ready to go. Too bad it's raining, but.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah, she cleaned up nice. One thing I didn't mention to you too is when I pulled the belts off, I spun the pulleys by hand and the tensioner pulley was a little noisy. The AC tensioner was a little noisy too, but I had two old tensioners with good bearings and good pulleys on them, so I swapped those out. So you have fresh pulleys on the AC and the serpentine belt tensioner too. But shined it up. It's looking good. No issues, no lights, no problems, no nothing, no leaks. She's clean, ready to go.
It's cleaner than my house. It's amazing. God, it's so beautiful when it's like this.
Yeah, you gotta love the M54s too.
Thank you. Hopefully it's...
All right, back home. This is for you.
Thank you, sir.
Holy shit. Holy shit.
Is that not unreal?
How do you even do this?
What do you mean?
Did he clean it? Or what did he do?
Yeah, he cleaned it, and all the parts that he replaced are
Clean, spanking new.
clean and new, and he cleaned it. Yeah,
Gorgeous.
it's isn't it?
It's crazy.
It's, well, and as it should be. It's the best part of the car. It's the part that matters
the most important part.
Yeah, it's incredible. The work is like, I don't know, man. It's amazing. Super lucky. All right, finished product. Turned out pretty clean.
I'll pull this out. I like that this is out. Looks better.
The man likes it out. What can I say?
Yeah, I gotta go.
Got tons of shots of this door. Gave Junior some really strong coffee. You can hear him getting uptight. I like it. All right, dude. You're a free man.
Love you.
Love you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're gonna Throw me on my way out.
No, you're the guy. Thanks for being such an easy kid to have. Have fun, man. Enjoy the ride.
Bye-bye.
Looking good.
Well guys, I think that's going to wrap this one up. Hunter came down from Portland this last weekend, picked up the car from Josh, and was just absolutely pumped on it. That last clip I put in there was of Hunter's genuine reaction to Josh unveiling the new X3 to him in the airport parking lot. And seeing his reaction to the engine bay just absolutely warmed my heart and made all of my hard work worth it. So I want to thank you, Josh, for believing in me and letting me tinker in the car. And Hunter, congratulations on your new ride, man. Let me know if anything happens. I'm here to help you take care of it. I lost audio on a bunch of my clips this video, so I apologize for the music and narration. I hope you guys still enjoyed, and I hoped it didn't throw off the usual vibe of the video too much. And one last thing before we go, I want to thank Mateo, my newest YouTube member, for jumping into the membership program. Thanks, man. I really appreciate your support, and I look forward to getting to know you more in the future. I hope you guys enjoyed, or I hope you learned something new. And as always, folks, I will see you on my next day off. Cheers.